Well, anyway, welcome everybody to our episode 2, all things upper limb difference overuse syndrome. And today we're going to be talking about overuse syndrome. It's first a little bit about who we are and why we're speaking on the subject. Well, Laura is an occupational therapist with an upper limb difference who has extensive knowledge on the topic, and I have an upper limb difference who wants you to understand how to help prevent overuse syndrome for yourself and your children. And by the way, we're going to be posting sources in the chat. And the first source that we're going to be posting in the chat is our first live that we did back in April. And that is on all things limb difference, where we talked about what is a limb difference, the types of limb difference, and resources on what to do and what to share when you have a limb difference. So here's a quick little bit about me. I'm an advocate for limb difference awareness. I was born with an upper limb difference. Maybe it was amniotic banding, but maybe it's symbroctodactyly. Not sure yet. My mission is to help normalize upper limb difference by showing how to do everyday tasks in the home, kitchen, garden with one hand. And when I'm not working as a financial planner during the day, I work as an actor to help to bring to make limb differences and folks with disabilities, bring it to the norm. And because we do need a need for diversity in the media. You can find me at verysmartideas.com, where I have a wealth of knowledge on cooking and doing things with limb difference and great recipes. I'm also on YouTube, which you'll see in a moment, and at Very Smart Ideas on all social media platforms. So, Laura, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so first of all, hi, Gigi. Thank you so much for inviting me to talk with you about this really important topic. I'm really happy to be here. So I was born with symbroctodactyly. These are my hands. You can see in my left hand, I have a thumb, and I call these nubbins. I received occupational therapy as a child. I decided to become an occupational therapist after I was in a pretty life-changing car accident when I was in high school that left me with considerable overuse problems on my dominant side. Many years ago, I started a website for families who are raising children with upper limb differences to share about growing up with it. And since then, I have revamped it, and there's a lot of new content. And then for the past 25 years, I've been practicing as a pediatric occupational therapist, which I might occasionally digress and say OT, because that's the acronym for it. And I'm also married and have two teenage children. And you can find me on Facebook and Instagram at On the Other Hand Therapy. And then online, my website is it's ontheotherhand.org.
Awesome. Awesome.
You good, Gigi?
Well, we also want to welcome Sam Sosina, who, and of course I just said it wrong. I apologize, Sam, who's an intern with On the Other Hand Therapy. He's a rising senior at Ohio University studying biology and pre-OT, and he's going to be moderating and reading the chat for us throughout the session. Before we delve in, please tell us about you. Are you moms and dads? Do you have a limb difference? Are you a practitioner or something else? Sam's going to be checking the chat for us to see where y'all are from. And Sam, since we're having some difficulties, please feel free to chime in and tell us where people are from and who's with us today. I see we've got Jory and Colleen and Jory's from Highland Park. I know Colleen is from Florida.
I just dropped in Laura's updated link of ontheotherhand.org.
Thanks, Sam.
Mm-hmm.
So let's just jump right in. Laura, what?
You're still watching. Okay.
We have someone from who has a new limb difference from Ontario, Canada, as well.
Wonderful. Welcome.
Courtney is a mom of a 1.5-year-old who was born with an upper limb difference.
Oh, also from Ohio. All right, Gigi, we good to keep going?
Well, welcome, welcome. We're glad to have you here. So, for time's sake, because Instagram cuts us off right at the hour, let's just jump right into it. Laura, what is overuse syndrome?
Yeah, so before we go into that, I just want to kind of remind everybody that we are not permitted to give medical advice over Instagram. So we just want to suggest that folks listen for what might work for your body or your child's or your loved ones. And then for sure, check with medical practitioners on anything you think might be helpful. So yeah, jumping into what is overuse syndrome. So it is a short or long-term condition involving pain, strain, or decreased function. It can be known by a lot of names like overuse injury, occupational overuse syndrome, cumulative trauma disorder, repetitive strain injury, repetitive motion disorder, or repetitive stress disorder.
Yep, I've heard many of these terms, and I bet our listeners have too. So, if you're comfortable sharing, tell us about your challenge. I know some of you just mentioned that you are new to this, new to our chat. I think because many of you have shared, maybe we should move on, Laura.
Okay, sure. Absolutely. So should we check in about why does it affect people with upper limb differences?
Yeah,
Yeah. So people with upper limb differences have an increased risk for overuse syndrome because of strain on the dominant side and compensations on the limb different side or sides, right? Some people might have one, some people might have two. So overuse syndrome typically develops first in the hands or arms, and then it can spread to other parts. And the compensations that one makes in hands or arms can cause strain or fatigue in other muscles. So just to know kind of the whole scope, it can actually turn into something that affects upper arms, back, shoulders, and neck.
oh, so as we know, catching overuse syndrome early is important, really important to help to prevent long-term problems, right?
Yes, absolutely. And one of the things that's a little tricky for this population, whether if we're talking about particularly folks who have congenital, we will definitely get to some people with acquired, is that in general, there's just very limited research on either congenital or acquired. So folks who were born with this, people who wound up having limb loss. There are some studies on adults with acquired limb loss. So we do know that overuse syndrome has been documented in that population, but there are currently no published studies on congenital limb difference. So one of the things that we've done is to go ahead and apply research on overuse injuries from research about overuse injuries in young athletes, as well as the research on acquired limb differences, and personal experiences also. And Sam's going to drop into the chat a link to a current paper that's about preventing overuse injuries in young athletes. And if you read through that and you just apply that to upper limb difference, you'll see it really does apply.
Yes, I just added that link to the chat, and there's a couple questions about or statements about overuse injury or overuse syndrome in general. Someone
Awesome.
asked,
So,
is there a
Laura,
way?
I've suffered from overuse syndrome in many areas. Can you talk about the kinds of movements that cause overuse syndrome?
Yes, and yes, Sam, thanks for trying to drop in some the questions in the chat about if there's a way to prevent it. We're going to kind of get to some of that. And some people may never have heard about this term previously, so it's something that we're really just trying to get out into this population, so we kind of are aware of it. I've also been dealing with overuse syndrome. For me, it's been over 30 years. And because at the time there really wasn't any information available, I had to put together my own team of practitioners and specialists to guide me. And I can tell you it's been quite a process. So one of the things that we're trying to help with is to be a resource to others and to provide information so that you don't have to figure all this out the same way that we did. And so knowing some preventative strategies, you can potentially prevent it for yourself or a loved one. So one of the things that's really important to know is that overuse syndrome can be caused by not enough rest and recovery, poor body positioning or posture, repeating specific straining motions. There's definitely potentially a mental health component of stress or an untreated mental health issue, and then weak muscles or deconditioning. And some of us have experienced all of these factors. And obviously, we can't take breaks the way other people do with our arms.
Right, right. Precisely. So for me, I started noticing probably at 23, 24, like really fatigue and neck problems. And I was way too young for them. What's the average age that overuse syndrome presents itself, Laura?
Yeah, that's a great question. I just wanted to mention that, yeah, don't click on the links right now. Maybe just go back, and Sam's going to list all the links at the very end. So don't feel like you have to click on them right now, anybody who's like commenting in the chat. So we kind of thought that overuse syndrome started in middle age for people with upper limb differences, but turns out we might have been wrong. So I found out from my own experience, and I think Gigi, you kind of said the same, talking to other folks with upper limb differences, that it was a really common problem. And until now, we didn't really know how common it was. It was just based on kind of a general sense from talking to other adults. But the good news is that we actually have some really new data. A friend of mine, Amber Jenkins, who is an outstanding occupational therapy professor at Rockhurst University in Kansas City, just completed a study. And the study was specifically about congenital one-sided upper limb difference. So just, know that this is not our entire population that we're talking about. But she's given me permission to share some preliminary results that haven't even been published yet. And what's really staggering is that 82% of respondents reported experiencing pain or overuse. And for 70% of respondents, the pain or strain developed by age 26. So for you, Gigi, you said 24. And for me, it was
24, I really started getting neck pain.
Yeah. And for me, it was about, like I said, I had been in a car accident. So for me, it was about 20. But so I thought that was really rare. I always thought, oh, it's because I had been in a car accident. Turns out, no, this isn't just from that. It's from the usage patterns that we have.
It's so sad. Thank goodness. I'm so happy we're talking about it. This is the one thing I really wanted to, I know I'm going off script, but this has been near and dear to my heart. All y'all out there watching us, we're so glad you're here. If we can help 5 of you or 1 of you or your children feel better, we're doing our job, right, Laura?
Yeah, absolutely.
So how does it develop?
Yeah, so this is really interesting. Overuse syndrome develops in stages over time. So one of the things that's really important is catching it early in either arm or hand, and that can prevent symptoms from getting worse. I have a blog on my website that talks about overuse syndrome, and it has a graphic that will be hopefully really helpful for people. The thing is that because it's really easy to ignore pain, there are 2 ways that all of you can help reduce the risk of overuse syndrome for you or a loved one, or a child, a spouse, a friend. So one is learning to recognize the stages, and we're going to go over those right now. And the second thing is noticing patterns of times that you are pushing or ignoring pain, because that's really the times we need to change our awareness so we can catch it.
Yeah, I reached out to Laura, I just mentioned after we met at the Lucky Fan Picnic to discuss starting a podcast. And originally we were going to talk about overuse syndrome, which we're doing today. And specifically after we saw so many young people, children and young adults, on social media straining their bodies in order to accomplish the task. And it was really important to me. And Laura, when we talked, she felt the exact same way, that we discuss this so parents can be aware of how to help their children use their body correctly. I posted something yesterday that just talked about posture and really how to be cognizant of your posture when you're doing things to make up for the difference in the length of our hands.
Yeah, 100%. So, and I had the exact same reaction to seeing those videos on social media. So I like to do on the one hand and on the other hand, because that's my name of my business. So on the one hand, I feel incredible joy when I see all these youngsters and older folks doing things that they really enjoy and love. And that's really important. And on the other hand, or nubbins, I feel really overwhelming concern that very few people seem to be talking about this issue. And just noting that sometimes children and adults, young adults, even older adults, sometimes they're using their bodies in straining ways that can lead to long-term injury and overuse. Some of this is preventable. Not all of it is, though, right? We have to be real about the fact that we do often have a limb length discrepancy, right? The full hand, if you do have a one-sided limb difference, and so you do have a full hand, is going to be longer than the partial hand or arm. So the concern is that medical providers are really not aware of this issue. This is why Dr. Jenkins is trying to document this, because in medicine, you really have to have research, right? It's really research driven, which is great, but we haven't had research on this. So we are just really concerned, as Gigi said, that parents really aren't receiving information on overuse syndrome at a time when they can help their children to learn habits, right? We know habits get set really, really young. So the earlier that we learn certain things to be preventative, the better it is going to be.
So to clarify, this is really, really new information, everybody. And many of us parents are just now becoming aware of these challenges. And at times, parents have told us that they feel bad that this wasn't on their radar. But you guys, and gals, you're all in really, really good company. You're not alone. I mean, unless you heard this from a medical practitioner, how would you know? You're just happy that your young child, your young adult is assimilating, doing everyday tasks. But how would you know, right, Laura?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So let's go ahead and delve in, because people had asked, like, how do we know like what it is? So there are 4 stages. And again, just so you can help kind of recognize. And just a reminder, I know a couple people have just joined, that this information that I'm going to be presenting on the 4 different stages, this comes from research on overuse injuries in young athletes. And on folks with acquired limb difference, and then personal experience. So this is kind of a conglomerate, like we're trying to put all the information together. So let's talk about stages 1 and 2. So in stage 1, many people with and without upper limb differences have experienced this. Pain occurs after activity. Hands or arms feel fatigued after work, after typing. It subsides with overnight rest. And some examples are pain or fatigue after cooking, playing sports, or typing with one hand. And in stage 2, the really big distinction is now it's not that the pain's happening after the activity, it's happening during it. But it's not affecting performance. It's just uncomfortable, right? You might have like some fatigue or discomfort. But one of the things to note is that sometimes it can start earlier, and discomfort may last into the next day. There may be increasing aching and tiredness, and rest brings relief. So that's good. We know that rest can work. And an example there is pain or fatigue during cooking, playing sports, or typing one-handed.
So I'm sorry, you froze for me for a minute there. Okay. You explained it so beautifully. Thank you. I wish I knew this when I was younger. It would have saved me so much pain and discomfort and time and physical therapy. I like you, I just thought it was a normal part of having an upper limb difference. Ignoring the pain in these stages is easy to do, you guys. Take it from me. No pain, no gain. Nope. Stop and rest. So now, Laura, now that we know what to look out for, it's important to know what to do when we feel these symptoms, right? It's important to make lifestyle changes, especially like during, right? Like stages 1 and 2. So what lifestyles, have you made? We'd love to hear from you, the audience. What have you done? What interesting things have you tried? We're pretty much all geniuses because we've had to hack the world around us, right? So would love to hear some of your ingenious ways of dealing.
Yeah. So just want to point out, while we're still talking kind of about stages 1 and 2, that one of the things that's really important is that because there may not be any bruising or outward sign of injury, right? Usually we're used to seeing like, oh, we have a bruise or an open wound or something, but there is no bruising. And so people may not realize that that's what's happening, that this is a progression. And so I just really want to repeat that it's important to talk to your loved one or patient or client on how to recognize pain. And certainly any parents out there, I have heard friends who are a little older, and they said that they were developing pain in their like late teens, and when they told their parents said, oh, you're fine. So it's just really important, right? Like the pain, we do not want to ignore the pain. And then I want to just go ahead and we're going to go back to lifestyle changes, but I want to just continue, kind of finish up stages 3 and 4, just so you kind of have the whole sequence in your mind. So in stage 3, now there's really serious aching, fatigue, and pain, and that pain is limiting full participation in the activity. And some people might try rest and over the counter anti-inflammatory medications, and those might bring some limited relief, which is great. But in the meantime, the muscles may be weakening because there are compensations, and now you're starting to maybe pull back a little bit from things that you're not used to doing. An example of this is that pain or fatigue are limiting the ability to cook, play sports, or type one-handed. And those are just examples that I'm kind of carrying through. And then I really want to get to the last stage, which I have definitely been in multiple times in my adult life. So this is definitely from personal experience, which is chronic pain even at rest. That means that the pain is not related to activity, and it's really uncomfortable. Like, it's really not fun. Constant aching, fatigue, pain. By now, this is affecting daily life and sleep. And by now, you've kind of already, unfortunately, probably exhausted over-the-counter anti-inflammatory medications, right? We know that you're not supposed to be on those for a really long time, or maybe they aren't working anymore, right? You're just still in having this extended pain cycle. And really, the only thing that can bring really extended relief is extended rest. So that's really affecting lifestyle. And muscles by this point really likely have weakened, right? Because now it's harder to do all the things that you've been doing. So just an example is, we're not even talking about activities anymore. We're talking about constant pain or fatigue in either hand, arm, back, neck, shoulder, kind of anything upper body.
Yeah, throbbing for sure.
Yes.
Well, let's go back to those lifestyles. Sam, let us know. What have people been saying about themselves in the first couple of stages? What are they doing? For example, I had mentioned that when I clean pots, I put the pot on another pot so that I don't have to lean all the way into the sink, and it keeps me upright.
Yeah. Nothing quite yet, but some people shared that their doctors, this Lucky Finn, shared that their OT hadn't heard of overuse syndrome until bringing it up from both of your accounts. And Courtney agreed that their child's pediatrician had seemed to be in the dark about limb differences in general.
Wow.
So yeah, it seems to
Wow.
be quite unknown. So
Yeah, that makes sense. Again, the medical professionals really don't have this information. They often don't see enough patients with, like, they'd have to kind of have seen a whole lifestyle, right? Because they would have to have seen a whole lifespan to kind of really know some of this. So yeah, and I just want to point out that, Gigi, I started using your technique for washing dishes. Usually I just tell my husband that I just really can't do it because it bothers my back, which is really true. That is legit. But I have to say, it did kind of work. I turned a pot over, and then I washed something on top, and I was like, oh, I guess I can do this. So good to know. So just speaking rather broadly, because again, we're talking about lifestyle changes here, right? So there are a lot of changes that people can make. And we're kind of focusing on stages 1 and 2, because that's really when you want to be making changes. Although I guess I want to point out that actually, ideally, you're making some of these changes before 1 and 2 is even anywhere in the future, right, Gigi? Like, the time to make the changes is to really, I think, honestly, like, if I were raising my own child with an upper limb difference, I would want to be cognizant of some of these things from my child's very young age. Some of the changes are simple, and some of them are more complicated, right? So one of the things that I'm going to be working on in the next few months is something that I'm going to call an overuse profile, which is like, what are the activities that are potentially causing pain and strain? It can be really helpful. So if you're out there and you're an adult with an overuse issue, or you're starting to have some pain, what's really important is to look at, what are the things that you're doing all the time? Is it typing? Is it, some people tell me that it's, playing games on their phone, it's holding their phone. There are all sorts of different culprits and contributors. And then there are professionals that can help with this also. So I'm just going to say, like, a good place to start, just a little plug. Like I mentioned before, I've created a 3-page infographic that's on my website. It's called Upper Limb Difference, Overuse Syndrome, Prevent, Reduce, Treat, because that's the order we want to go in. We want to prevent it if it's not happened yet. We want to reduce the problem if it has started, and then we want to treat it if somebody's in the middle of it. So when you read through that, the most important thing probably is just to see what one suggestion seems doable right now. One thing. Right. We know from psychology research, that if we try to do too many things at once, we probably won't stick with them. So you can always go back and add more when you're ready. And Sam has already put that in the chat, so I think we're good with that.
Perfect. That infographic is awesome. I love it.
Thanks, Gigi.
It's so clear. So we have covered quite a bit as usual. So let's get to the heart of the topic. What are some general ways to help reduce overuse syndrome? I know we've touched on them, but what are some of the things we can do and how can we understand it?
Yeah, so I would say the number one thing is really paying attention to pain. So, you mentioned before, Gigi, we live in a culture that thinks that no pain, no gain is like a good mantra, and I'm going to really dispute that. So, I think that that's not a good message. I think we really want to be teaching children and us as adults to be attentive to our bodies, to notice messages of pain, and certainly in the dominant arm or the both, if there are double limb differences, for sure. The other thing I really want to encourage is taking breaks. So we talked a little bit about the social media and, seeing kids or young adults doing awesome things, but maybe not with the best ergonomics, biomechanics, meaning like the body positioning. So one of the ways we deal with that is we take breaks like every 20 minutes for something that's straining. Doing some stretching, like getting some blood flow and some stretching into the shoulders. Feel free to do these along with me at home. Nobody's watching you. Right. And this is something I also hope to kind of add to, so people have these resources, but it's really important that we be looking at body positioning and not straining really either side.
It makes me want to stretch right now.
Yes.
Well, I've mentioned cleaning pots and cutting vegetables. I do have videos that talk about how to adapt using an upper limb difference. So if you have a few minutes, check them out. They can be found at verysmartideas.com under All Things Limb Difference. Surprise, surprise, that's the title of it. Or about Gigi. And I think, Sam, you're going to also put that in the chat. So thank you so very much. And yeah, so Laura, what else do we do?
Yeah, so another thing I really like to encourage families and adults, so again, this applies to everybody, is encouraging symmetry by involving the side with the limb difference. Again, if it's both sides, and we kind of have to be using both sides, in activities of daily living. So there are some adaptive gadgets. So I'm going to do a little show and tell right now. Many of you know about this product called Easy Hold. I have like a whole ring here of all the different sizes. These are incredibly awesome silicone straps. They come in different lengths. They come with different size openings to attach to different kinds of gadgets. So just as an example, this is how I hold my toothbrush. I hold it with my limb different hand. And so what that means is for 4 minutes a day, which maybe doesn't sound like a lot, but 4 minutes is a lot of continuous use. I know that I'm using and strengthening the side with my limb difference and giving a break to the side that I overuse. And Sam's going to put the link to Easy Hold, just a really quick, like I do have an affiliate status. I do get a tiny little commission, but you also get 15% off. Anybody out there who wants to use the coupon code. I just request that people do not post this on the internet because that's how we shut all those kinds of things down. So please don't share, just use for yourselves. And then a couple other things that I use with my left hand. This is a strap that I can put my hand in on my phone. So it's not perfect, but it does help. And it means that I'm not potentially using my limb difference hand in kind of a straining way. And it means that it leaves my dominant hand free. I have all sorts of like gadgets that I have developed, that I've not developed, that I use, that I have, found over my life. Like here's a cup that I can hold with either hand. It's a very simple cup with just, two different handles. And then the last thing I just want to mention, again, going back to the lifestyle things, just some suggestions, is that just really important that anybody who might be in those stages 3 and 4, right, where now pain is really affecting activities, there's not really much relief. It's really important that people seek professional medical care. And there are occupational therapists. In the infographic that I mentioned earlier, we try to have there's a list of different kinds of medical practitioners and what they do, just to kind of help guide, because it can be a little overwhelming to know where to start. So just a really important caution there about those stages.
Well, that's a lot. I was just listening to it all. I also have this kind of cool little strap, and this is just a pencil with an eraser that I made, and it's got a little Velcro, and this helps me hunt and peck a little bit better. So this, like Laura was saying, it allows me to use my left side as well as holding my phone just like you do, Laura. These are all awesome tips. So to recap, we need to pay attention to how we're using our hands and arms, and be sure to always stand up straight and keep your shoulders back. It's so important because, and Laura knows this better than I as the expert, when your torso is straight and your shoulders are back, it's harder to pull your limb difference arm out and to straighten. So that's another quick tip, and that's what I talk about when we do our pots together, Laura. Um,
Yes.
so by lifting something to the sink to wash it, for example, the same thing. Squat. Take that opportunity to teach your little ones too to squat when they're doing something. So, Laura, what are your important takeaways?
Yeah, I would say the biggest takeaways are definitely awareness of the no pain, no gain mindset and how that can be really, really problematic for this population. And just a reminder again that parents, if at any point your children say that they have pain, this is not something that they necessarily will happen. I definitely don't want to imply that your child's going to be in pain all the time. That'd be a really overwhelming thing to hear. At the same time, kids do sometimes. I developed pain in my limb different hand. I was using it all the time to do all sorts of things, and that was actually what led me to OT when I was about 8 or 9. So really, just listen. Right, pain is there for a reason, and so if children ever say that they're in pain, really, it's important to start with pediatrician and not be dismissed, not be dismissive.
Agree, agree. Well said. So to repeat, consider activity-specific adaptations and prosthetics, if you will. For example, the gadget that I showed you before and all the neat, easy hold products that Laura showed you. When your child begins to use technology, adapt the technology to your child, right? Don't, rather than really adapting your child to the technology. Like that bears repeating, right? Make
Yeah.
sure that your child is using the technology in the best way possible for he or she, not the reverse. And I think that's really important. And Laura also has a free infographic on technology that Sam will also put in the chat. But it's such a great piece to look at and to
Thanks,
understand.
Gigi.
And to Laura's point before, most of us with limb differences have a strap that allow us to use our limb different arm or hand, right? So that allows us to hold our back straight and look at something and also continue to develop, even though it's a little bit of a time and it's very low in weight, continue to develop the muscles on that left side. In my case, that left side. So everybody out there, what are your takeaways? What do you think? What have you learned? What would you like us to talk about? What are your questions?
Yeah, we'd really love to hear from everyone.
Adaptive gadgets with your little ones. Gotcha. Let's see. Have not thought of any other lifestyle changes like the pot, to be honest. Well, we're here to help. Hopefully, we're spurring on some energy and some ideas for you.
Someone just said that they appreciate the tips. They said great tips and that they need to rest more.
Mm.
I need to rest more for sure.
Yeah, that might be a topic for another one of our lives, Gigi, right? Is like there's some ableism in our kind of go, go, go culture of like never rest, never stop, always be productive. And when you are somebody who has a difference, a physical difference or a physical disability, that, often there are, I'm not going to speak for everybody. I'm just saying for me, like I definitely have had to learn to take breaks and alternate what I'm doing. And really, I want to have a lifelong, healthy life. So I've learned to make some of those accommodations.
I couldn't agree more. The other thing is, we compare ourselves to when we're little, we compare ourselves to other children with, two arms, two hands, etc. And sometimes it can be hard to not want to, keep up, for lack of better terminology. Well, I'm so thankful for you, Laura, and thank you for your help, Sam. But thank you so much for your boundless knowledge and compassion, and for being a part of All Things Limb Difference. I'm just thrilled to have you as my partner and teammate here.
Right back at you, Gigi. I love these. It's been so great working with you on this.
Me too. Ditto. Ditto. Well, with that in mind, if you have any questions, feel free to DM us. I'm at Very Smart Ideas on Instagram and Facebook and whatever else is out there, TikTok. And Laura is, on the other hand, occupational therapy. And she is on Instagram. And, I never follow you. I think I follow you on Facebook, but on Facebook. And her website is incredible. You must visit her website. She's a wealth of knowledge.
Thank you, Gigi. Again, right back at you.
Okay.
And do we
Yes,
want to mention
if
our next
nothing
date?
more, Sam, we'll say goodnight to everybody.
Gigi, do you want to mention our next date?
Oh, yes, I do. No, we put it on. It was was it June 18th? I'm
I
sorry.
think so. That's okay. Yeah, I think it was June 18th.
June 18th. Yeah, June 18th at 7 p.m. Central Time, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. I was looking at my cheat sheet and I didn't see it on my notes. I apologize for that. And the topic to be determined, however, we can be swayed. If all y'all out there have some ideas that you'd like to share with us, feel free to DM us on something a subject matter that you might want to know more about. We are here to listen, and we are also here to learn ourselves. And the other thing I would love to say in conclusion is I wish all the mamas out there a happy, happy, happy Mother's Day. And thank you so much for
Yeah,
joining us.
absolutely. Thanks, everyone.